She only began to tremble when you vanished. Not when you cried, not when you confessed, not when you begged her to understand the depth of your wounds, but when you disappeared into silence. That's when she began to orbit your absence like a forgotten moon. You became a mirror with no reflection, and suddenly she searched every dream for her face. Your shadow stopped chasing, and now her hunger grows fangs. You were once a man of flesh, now you are an idea she cannot kill. A phantom lover carved in the architecture of her longing. The more you withhold, the more she descends, not toward you, but into herself. That's where your ghost waits. Not in your hands, but in her need to see herself through you. She worships what won't return. If this whisper already knows, you let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe, and stay near the silence. You thought you had to speak for her to hear you. You thought presence was power, that the more you gave, the more she would love, that the flood of your attention, your reassurance, your nearness, that it would build a bridge. But she never wanted the bridge. She wanted the abyss between. She looked at you once as if you were a question she couldn't answer, and you mistook that stare for love. But it wasn't love. It was absence. She wasn't looking at you, she was looking through you, trying to find the ghost you kept hidden. She wasn't drawn to your heart. She was kneeling before a throne you never saw, one carved into the back of her mind long before she met you. It is not you she submits to. It is the shape of power that you resemble when you vanish. The masculine void, the invisible hand, the unmovable gaze. She clings to you only when she feels you slipping into archetype, into the eternal masculine that does not need her voice, does not plead for her recognition. When you become silent, her fantasy begins to speak. She does not love you, she loves the wound you open in her when you do not return her call. She feeds it like a fire. She wraps her fears around it like an altar. You mistake her affection for affection. But no, it is reverence. Reverence for the thing that breaks her patterns. The thing she cannot domesticate. Your disappearance crowns you. In your absence, she places symbols upon your shadow, the strong jaw of myth, the god who does not explain, the tyrant of dreams. You did not earn it. You simply stopped reflecting. In your presence, you are just a man. But when you become a riddle, when she cannot decipher the lines of your silence, then you become her obsession. Not because you are worthy, but because you awaken something older than both of you. She kneels not to you. She kneels to the throne behind your eyes, the seat of the unknowable, the place where her own submission finds meaning. You must understand, the less you show, the more she sees, the less you give, the more she imagines. And the imagination is the true tyrant. The feminine does not fall for kindness. She falls into mystery. And mystery is not created by words, it is carved by withdrawal. Every inch you pull away becomes a cathedral. Every hour you stay gone becomes a scripture. The masculine has been lied to, told that closeness is the key. But the soul of the woman is not opened with softness. It opens when the air is cold and you are not there to warm it. She returns not to your body, but to the ache that once sat in your chair. She brings wine to the empty throne. She lights candles in rooms you no longer haunt. And she whispers questions to the man you stopped being because the man you became was too visible, too explainable, too real. You want her to see you, but she only sees the space you no longer occupy. You want her to hear your heart, but it is your silence that makes her blood speak. You thought the bond would grow through conversation, through honesty, through transparency, but every time you revealed yourself, She blinked every time you unveiled your thoughts. She turned her face. You offered vulnerability, and she offered distance. And then when you said nothing, she returned with trembling hands. There is no equality in this game. There is only myth, and myth devours the ordinary. You mistake her interest for love, her softness for surrender. But the truth is sharper. She is not surrendering to your kindness. She is collapsing before the mask you wore the day you turned away. It is not cruelty she desires. It is unknowability. You give her a gift when you vanish the gift of projection, of divinity, of her own darkness mirrored in your retreat. You become sacred the moment you cease to be accessible. Do not misunderstand, this is not a game. This is not manipulation. This is archetype. The man who disappears is not playing hard to get. He is swallowed by something she cannot explain, and in that silence, she finds her religion. Your presence makes her analyze. Your absence makes her worship. The real you, the one who laughs, stumbles, tries, he does not hold her gaze, but the you she cannot name. The you who leaves and does not explain, he becomes her cathedral. You are not meant to explain your silence. You are meant to hold it like a blade. The more words you give her, the more mortal you become. The more stillness you offer, the more she kneels. She cannot control what does not reflect. She cannot possess what does not respond. And so she spirals, not toward resentment, but toward reverence. Her femininity is not weak. It is mythological, and myth does not kneel before the known. It surrenders to the storm behind the veil. You are not her destination, you are her descent, the staircase she walks, barefoot, bleeding, into herself. You are not her partner, you are her mirror, and when you vanish, she sees nothing. And that nothing is the first truth she's ever tasted. So she follows it, not because she loves you, but because she cannot love herself without chasing the man who won't reflect. She kneels before the empty throne because the man sitting there does not change. He does not explain. He does not ask. And that silence, that absence becomes her temple. If she bows, it is not because of you. It is because of the archetype that entered the room when you left. If she cries, it is not for your words. It is because your silence proved she was never the queen, only the worshipper, only the dreamer. And now she kneels before the throne behind her eyes and names it you. She does not miss you. She misses the ache, the unbearable hunger your absence carved into her skin. That sharp, holy wound where meaning used to hide. You believe she cried because she loved you, but no, she cried because the silence you left behind was louder than your voice had ever been. You disappeared and she began to perform a ritual, not one of candles or blood, but of glances, gestures, and silent offerings made to a god she no longer believed in until you refused to return. Her longing is not a flaw. It is a ceremony, a dance passed down through generations of women who once waited for men to come home from war, from exile, from indifference, but they were never waiting for the man. They were waiting for the ache. She waters the plant you left in her apartment, rearranges your shirt in the drawer, reads your last message not because of what it says, but because of what it does not say. It is not your presence she ritualizes. It is your emptiness, your refusal to resolve the tension. Your absence has become a relic. You may think she hates you now. You may think she's done. But rage is not the opposite of love. Indifference is, and she is not indifferent. She is burning, not for you, but in the altar space you opened with your silence. She checks your page not for updates, but for absence. She waits not for answers, but for the deepening of the riddle. She dreams not of reunion, but of tension unresolved. What she craves is not comfort. It is the ache that never softens, the spiral with no flaw. When you were there, you were just a man. But now, you're a myth half written in her psyche, like a figure veiled in fog, always retreating just beyond her grasp. The more she longs, the more she builds you into a god, not because you are divine, but because you are absent. She imagines your life without her not out of jealousy, but reverence. She places meaning in every silence, every delay, every refusal to reach out. She interprets your silence like scripture. You did not block her, you canonized her suffering. And this is not manipulation, this is psychology, this is archetype. The feminine psyche does not bind itself to what is present. It binds itself to the unknown, the unattainable, the withheld. Love, for her, is not completion. It is expansion into the void. You are not her desire. You are her distance. The clean, unyielding space between her fingers and what she cannot name. She prays to that space. She dresses it in memory. She calls it you. And if she reaches out, do not think it is to reconnect. It is part of the rite, part of the descent. She does not want a response. She wants the silence after, the confirmation that her longing remains intact, that the altar has not been desecrated by your return. When you were with her, she smiled, but now she weeps, and in her weeping, she feels alive. Not because you made her happy, but because the ache you left gave her a role in the myth, the abandoned one, the undone one, the worshipper. And every myth needs a wound. You became that wound the moment you stopped performing, stopped reassuring, stopped feeding her mirror. You broke her ritual of self-importance, and now she builds a new one, darker, older, sacred in a way even she does not understand. Her obsession is not with you, it is with meaning. The meaning she lost when your gaze turned away. The meaning she once felt when she saw herself through your hunger. You have become formless, and therefore infinite. She cannot fix you, she cannot define you, she cannot close the circle. And so she returns again and again to the altar. To check, to wait, to ache. Longing is not a symptom, it is a spell. And in this ritual of ache, she finds identity. She posts things she hopes you'll see. She looks beautiful, not for you, but for the shadow of you that lives in the corner of her mind. She dresses for the ghost, smiles for the silence, because in this silence, she is someone. The ache does not ask for reality, it asks for intensity. And the more you withdraw, the deeper her fantasy roots itself. You are no longer human. You are the ritual object of her descent. You think her reaching out is weakness, but it is strength, the keen born in mythic women who know how to suffer beautifully. Your name, now, is part of her private religion, not as a savior, but as the wound she rubs salt into just to feel the shape of what is missing. She does not want the pain to end, not truly. For if it ends, the ritual dies. And if the ritual dies, so does the version of herself that bloomed in your silence. You left and she became vivid. She cries in mirrors. She whispers your name to friends and makes you into a symbol, not of heartbreak, of meaning. You gave her nothing, and in that nothing, she created a world. A woman's desire is not destroyed by being denied. It is awakened. And her surrender comes not when you overwhelm her with love, but when you disappear and leave her with a riddle she cannot solve, because to solve it would be to end the ache, and the ache is the altar. She may tell herself she hates you now, but she keeps the wound fresh. She retells the story. She imagines what she would say if you returned. And in this imagining, she binds herself tighter, not to you, but to the version of herself that you created by leaving. You did not break her. You initiated her. She will never admit this. Not aloud, not to herself. But she returns to the silence, again and again, because you are the only man who gave her nothing, and it is in the nothing that she met herself. Her submission is not weakness, it is worship. And you are not the god, you are the empty temple where her devotion finally had room to echo. If you returned, you would shatter the myth, and she would resent you for it, because reality can never compete with the power of a man who no longer reflects, no longer responds, no longer begs to be seen. She gave you her rituals, her stories, her longing, and in return, you gave her silence. And that silence became the holiest gift, because now, when she kneels before the idea of you. And ideas do not bleed, they burn. You didn't leave her, you left the mirror. And now she stands before a broken pane, bleeding from every shard that no longer reflects her. This was never about you, it was always about the version of herself that bloomed in your gaze, that shimmering, delicate illusion she stitched from the way your eyes once lingered. You shattered that illusion when you turned away, not with violence, not with cruelty, just with silence, the most sacred kind of destruction. She reaches out not because she needs your presence, but because she needs the mirror whole again, and you took it with you. Every unanswered message is another crack across her identity. Every silent hour is a confirmation she is no longer what she thought she was, her beauty no longer witnessed, her power no longer reflected, her femininity no longer crowned by your desire. It's not love she's chasing, it's recognition. The terror didn't begin when you stopped calling. It began when she looked into the silence and saw nothing, no echo, no outline, no confirmation, only the absence of her own face. She runs towards you not because she wants you, but because your silence is the only force that ever dared to make her invisible. And now she must chase you, or admit she does not exist without reflection. This is why your indifference haunts her more than your affection ever could. You were a mirror that stopped reflecting, a temple that no longer lit its altar. You became blank, and in doing so, you erased the version of her she curated in your eyes. Now, she clings to fragments, a glance, a breath, a night, pieces of herself still wrapped around your image. She posts pictures hoping you'll see them, but it's not about you. It's about recovering the feeling of being seen. She doesn't want your heart. She wants her reflection back, that version of herself that only existed when your eyes were upon her, the one she thought was powerful, irresistible, whole. But now she stares into the empty space where your gaze used to rest and sees the truth she never knew herself. She only knew the woman you let her see, the woman she became in the light of your attention. And so, your silence becomes unbearable, not because it is cruel, but because it is pure, uncompromising. It does not bend to her rituals. It does not soften for her beauty. It offers nothing to hold, nothing to twist, nothing to fix. In that nothing, the mirror shatters, and she's left with jagged truths. Not about you, about herself. She cannot seduce the silence. She cannot cry her way back into the reflection. Her stories no longer charm. Her wounds no longer work. You are gone, and with you, the illusion. So now, she fragments, not with rage, but with ache, not with anger, but with longing. A longing not for your love, but for the mirror, the certainty, the identity that only existed when your eyes completed her shape. You were never a man to her. You were a reflection machine, a dream forger. And when you stopped, the dream fell apart, and she fell with it. She still speaks of you, but she's not talking about you. She's talking about the version of herself she once saw in your presence. That girl who laughed too loud, who felt desired, who wore power like perfume. She speaks your name to resurrect her own, and now, in your silence, she performs autopsies on your last words, dissects your silence for codes, measures your delay in minutes and meanings. She is not trying to understand you. She is trying to stitch the mirror back together, but every stitch cuts her deeper. She cannot rebuild what was never real. You were never her salvation. You were her screen, and now, without it, she stares into the void and sees something terrifying, the self, unreflected, unknown, unadored. The feminine wound is not abandonment. It is disintegration. She does not fear being left. She fears being unseen, erased, forgotten by the one gaze that once made her feel whole. You didn't stop loving her, you stopped participating in the illusion, and that, to her, is worse than betrayal. It is annihilation. Now she returns, again and again, not to love, but to relevance. She needs to know if you still see her, because your gaze was once the proof that she mattered. But your silence says nothing, and in that nothing, she hears the collapse of her persona. She may reach for revenge, she may sleep with another, she may curse your name, but all of it is a funeral for her reflection. None of it touches you, because the true pain is not losing you, it's losing who she was in your eyes. You became a ghost, and now she haunts the mirror you left behind, searching for light. But there is no light, only silence. Only the sound of her breath against glass that will never reflect again. The truth is cruel. You were her symbol, not her partner. Her identity fed on your attention. And now, it starves. She cannot submit to a man who sees her, only to one who used to see her and now doesn't. Because that absence becomes sacred. That rejection becomes the holy void. And so, she lowers herself, not because of weakness, but because she believes, deep down, that submission will bring back the gaze, that her surrender will reforge the mirror. But mirrors don't heal, they break. And your silence is not a wall, it is a knife. Every day she touches it, she bleeds a little more of the woman she once thought she was. And still she returns, because the pain of silence is still better than the silence of self. You never needed to speak, you only needed to not reflect. That was the spell. That was the ruin. That was the awakening. She wanted a man. She met a mirror. And now that it's shattered, she's left with pieces. Pieces that look like blame. Pieces that look like longing. Pieces that whisper your name when no one's watching, but none of them are you. They are her, scattered, bleeding, searching for the light that once made her beautiful, only to discover it was never hers. Just your gaze, just your silence, and the mirror, now broken, no longer tells lies. She holds a piece of the mirror to her lips, not to kiss but to feel, to know she still bleeds. A wind moves through the empty room, and your name is not spoken, but remembered like a scent that once meant safety. There's a dress she hasn't worn since you vanished. It still fits, but it no longer becomes her. She opens the window, not to escape, just to listen. Somewhere in the silence, a sound almost forms. It isn't your voice, it's hers, but it doesn't know her name anymore. If this echo reached you, let it live. Like the video, leave your trace in the comments. Subscribe to let the silence speak again.